Hey guys, hope you're doing good. We're gonna play some Silence today. See Hefty Tablet, and I essentially snap pick it. Silence got some really good rare options. Fan of Knives in particular, I enjoy because it offers, yes, 16 damage, but turning your Shivs into an AoE solution is fantastic in my opinion. You'll see a lot through this video. I'll be speeding up basic combats where there wasn't really anything to talk about, but we'll be talking through the card selections, the elite combats, and the bosses, of course. I think about the fumes, but I already have an AoE solution, so I decided to go with the footwork, which was a pretty good decision. As here, I see another footwork, which might have been a good choice for defense, but I decide to take the prowess as it offers a little bit of offensive capability. And here we'll see that I decide to take the cash over the relic. Although the relic might have been a really strong option, and by the end, probably the correct one, at the moment I thought that the cash would be better. The regen potion is going to come in really handy here, and my first piercing will is an easy decision. Here again, I decide to take the larger amount of cash as I'll be able to rest, and I just got the heal potion. I decide to pop the regen potion here. I think it'll just be useful as I can control the damage output throughout this fight better, and in that way we'll be able to utilize every ounce of the healing from the regen potion. Echoing Slash here is a great pickup. It's fantastic AoE. I'm really happy to see it as uncommon these days, and it will immediately come super in handy for the Frog Parasite. I start fumbling with my sequencing here. Popping the Shivs was probably not the best choice, but I figure I'll be able to use the Fire Potion and get one Shiv off on the Wrigglers. My biggest concern at this point is making sure that I'm full blocking this turn, but then I'm also wanting to bring something in range of dying to Echoing Slash. That way we'll just be able to clear them out, and that pays off immediately as I draw Echoing Slash, and that just wipes the board. We're also rewarded with a leading strike, which is great because this is our first instance of renewable Shiv generation. Getting into the shop, I see the Helical Dart, which I've never actually played with before. I think it's going to be the right decision, though, as I'll be able to pick up even more Shivs here with the Cloak and Dagger. And then I land on picking up a Strength Potion just for a little extra scaling during the elite fights. I end up having a lot of problems with this hard pool combat in particular. The scaling of the worm and the debuff from the beetle just absolutely wreck me and end with me taking way more damage than I should have throughout the course of this fight. But we get it through it and reward it with another Cloak and Dagger, which is great. Here I'm deciding on what to upgrade. I check, confirming that there's an elite right there, and taking the shop isn't better, so I go with Prowess as it will add to my offensive and defensive capabilities on the fight. Getting in against the statue, I'm happy to see that my powers are in my opening hand. I decided to use my energy potion to get Fan up now, although I could have saved the potion for later, but decided that it was worth just getting Fan out there for the initial damage against the elite. The elite's already halfway down here. The cloaks come in really useful, but my sequencing is poor here. I'm still not used to using the helical dart and having the dexterity stack up, but it wasn't too big of a deal. Again, some really bad sequencing on my part, just not being used to the helical dart. I should really be more heads up about it. But we're out. Meal ticket is really welcome, and I snapped the dash as it's pretty good offensive and defensive. I smashed that relic here to take the heal, and then that gives me the ability, I feel, to upgrade and have plenty of health for the kin fight. Kin fight goes well. I pop the strength as I feel that I'm going to need that little bit of extra scaling to start, and I begin focusing on the farthest most of the minions. Happy to see both Prowess and Phantom Knives here. I decide to just eat the damage for the turn. Something that I've been trying to think about during boss fights more is that as you're healing out to the next act, you're healing 80%. So all the damage you take during the boss fight is actually reduced by 80%. So you're only taking 20% of that damage. So it's something where, yes, it's a resource you're using, but the lower health you are, you're gonna heal up more anyways. You get more value out of that act healing. Definitely better sequencing here for me, using the helical darts dexterity and making sure that I popped the cloak that gave me more daggers first before popping the second cloak. But anyways, we're out really fast, and I actually begin to debate between Blade of Ink and Knife Trap. It should be Knife Trap here no matter what, but I was thinking about the application of Weekend, which would have been kind of nice. Here for Pale, we see some interesting options. I am trying to see if Duplicate would make sense, Clone would make sense in any way, shape, or form, but I can't really see it being the right choice. So I ended up going with Pale's Flash, thinking that the energy will be really welcome. Decided to take a little bit of damage. Probably should have not. Probably should have set this up better, but it ended up not being too big of a deal. I don't take anything here. Now, I'm pretty committed to daggers, and I think that this is actually a pretty big mistake on my part. I should have taken Bouncing Flask there. I think it would have added a lot of damage later on in the run when I really needed it, and I was being very short-sighted thinking that my daggers was going to carry me the rest of the way. Easy enough fight here, especially with the dexterity stacking up. Blocking becomes essentially no issue. I'm thinking about the Pounce in that I can cast a free Knife Trap off of it, but I end up going with the Lake Sweep for the application of Weaken. Again, good sequencing there as far as the daggers and the blocks go. Pretty happy getting out of there with that. Ben and Ives finally shows up and able to close this out without taking too much more damage. Infinite Blades is very welcome here. Just consistent dagger damage for the remainder of the run, especially since it's upgraded. Grab the Relic, ends up coming in handy quite a bit through the remainder of the run. I end up taking way more damage in this fight than I should have. It is a hard pull combat, but I ended up taking 17 damage in the fight, and there was probably just better sequencing to avoid taking that much on a fight like this. I once again have an opportunity for a bouncing flask, and I decide not to take it. And again, I do think this was the wrong choice. By the end of the run, I could have used that extra damage. But I do get a heal up here, and I get 2 really nice potions. This ends up being the elite that I was the most worried about, with Knife Trap being my main finisher, and needing to use skills to set up with my daggers a lot. I was quite concerned. My Shivs do give me dexterity, but if I have to cast skills in order to get the dexterity, then the block that the skills are offering won't necessarily help me out. By this point, my sequencing is all kinds of messed up, and I begin making just really bad decisions, and now I went from 58 HP down to 14 during this fight. I finally get off with the Knife Trap, but the damage is done, and my HP is obviously really low. We do get another Cloak and Dagger, but that's not much of a consolation prize. We're having to heal again here, but at least we get to pick up a potion, and the Regal Pillow is putting in a lot of work for us. I then go on to take a ton of damage for a big chunk of gold here. I didn't want to take the final chunk, but I decided to pick up the gold. Here we actually pop the relic really early. I'm able to pick up an option for a potion down there, and then I risk it for the card, and that pays off because it ended up not being a curse, which was what I was most worried about. Pick up the lucky potion, and Expose ends up being pretty good for the rest of the run. We're coming into the shop with quite a bit of gold. I think about the lucky fish comboing with the dragon fruit and decide that I can immediately start upping my maximum life total here. Potentially should have grabbed the blood vial, but I decided to remove the debt for maintaining my gold total for the rest of the run. And with the Decimillipede being the final elite that I haven't faced, I wasn't too worried about it. I really luck out. My power potion gives me a fan early. Otherwise, I would have had to blocked and waited for mine to pop up. But obviously, this worked out really dang well in my favor and absolutely tore through that elite combat. We get into the rest site and we are going to upgrade a cloak and dagger. That'll give us an additional dagger and an additional dexterity when we're fighting. Coming into the crab, I'm not too concerned. I figure once I have up Phantom Knives that the fight will go pretty smoothly. I don't make a very good decision as far as who I focus. I tend to really focus Rocket, but for some reason on this fight, I spend so much extra time turned around focusing. Like, I just split the damage, and it doesn't make sense at any point. Maybe during the fight, and this is actually probably it, I was thinking once Phantom Knives goes up, I'm going to no longer be able to turn around from using my Shivs. And so I figure it might make more sense to split the damage a little bit and get them both down as fast as possible once I can no longer turn, since I can do a pretty good amount of block as we're going through the fight. I decide not to use Expose there. I hope that I can use it on a turn where I have one of these guys blocking a lot. I finally get Phantom Knives up. Of course it was in the bottom deck. I actually think that there's something going on with the way that this shuffles. I find on boss fights that my game-winning powers seem to be disproportionately clumped at the bottom of my deck, and it just feels that way. Maybe it just feels that way because you remember those fights where you are having that bad luck and you're punished for it more often. And I while I'm watching other people's content, I definitely notice it a lot. I'll be watching them play and they'll be sitting there saying, "Oh man, if only I could get my powers." But yeah, this fight from this point on goes really smoothly. I end up using the buffer there, and might have been a mistake to use it so early, but yeah, we're gonna turn around and we're gonna be okay here. Should not be a problem. I really wish there was a way that I could have sequenced this to have the expose go off after or during the knife trap. I you know, whatever. It's just it would have been a nice thing, but we definitely do enough damage that it doesn't matter. So I figure I'll put up the vulnerable and we might be able to just drill through because I hadn't done the math. Definitely enough to drop him there. And our rare really doesn't synchronize with anything that we're doing. I see the abrasive and think that the thorns is, thorns is pretty nice. I am getting a lot of dexterity, so I should be able to block a bit and do some reflective damage. And then we get in and we see not the best options. Yes, they're good. And I end up going with the Blessed Antler, though. Figuring that the extra energy will enable me to combo more with my Knife Trap and Phantom Blades when it's relevant. We start right here where my deck building issues start popping up. I start picking too many cards up and cluttering my deck, and although for the most part they do have synergy with the rest of the deck, I'm just diluting my good cards with mediocre cards or duplicates of other cards that I already have. Here, though, I will say this pickup was really nice. I really needed a bit more scaling, and being able to pick up an additional, essentially, prowess for 2 more strength was quite fantastic. So we come in on the Soul Nexus, and the opening hand has 0 block. There's just going to be some unavoidable damage here, so I decide to weaken. This, though, is revealing a deck building weakness here that I should have been more conscious of when selecting cards for the rest of the run. I obviously didn't have enough density of defensive cards in my deck to consistently draw them every turn to ensure that I could avoid taking unavoidable damage. And we can see here that I pass up a dodge and roll, which I definitely should have taken. We start off with the Expose removing his artifact, which is fantastic. And now we move on to playing our cards. We, again, can't quite completely block this turn. And it again reveals that we are having issues with block that I just am not accepting right now. And again, more unavoidable damage. Even popping a potion doesn't save me. I'm also not having energy issues here. I am having damage and block issues. So again, an upgraded bouncing flask definitely would have helped with the throughput of damage and gotten me out of fights quicker. We get in on glass and we see that we've got some early powers, which is really fantastic. We also have some dexterity scaling through blade stance, which is great, but we don't really need it thanks to our Van Brace doubling our first block and having so much dexterity already stacked up due to the prowess and the other power. But again, we have another turn with unavoidable damage because I just don't have a density of block in the deck that allows me to draw it consistently. I have plenty of dagger generation, which will scale knife trap fantastically, but it doesn't really matter if I can't live long enough to get there. Knowing I have the kill, if I pop a pot here, I go ahead and clobber glass, getting me out of the fight without too much more damage. This is always going to be the harder of the two fights. Phase 1 really punishes my dagger generation with skills. Phase 2 is going to really punish my lack of consistent block. And I can't just race a huge knife trap and clobber him from phase 2 because of the breaks in the phases. So I know I'm in trouble. I'm really happy to see him go down here. But now I have to start thinking about how I'm going to be blocking on these turns. And I know that I'm actually in a little bit of trouble. On a turn with a good amount of block cards in my hand, still was not enough to avoid taking damage. Piercing Wail is fantastic to see here. That was more luck of the draw than anything else. And here we see I'm going to be taking a massive amount of damage that I couldn't avoid. And finally, we come to the end where no matter what I do, I just cannot keep myself alive. I can't even eke out the last 34 damage. And I go down, ending the run, cursing myself for my lack of foresight. Not quite the top. Yeah, this was just a run where deck building got away from me. I built a huge deck, 40 cards, and did not maintain the density of block cards to maintain that. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching my content. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.